Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my Q&A. I only intended to do one of these videos, but all of you sent in so many good questions that I just felt obliged to keep reading them, and well, I hope you find this interesting. This might be a good way to start. Lucas Wang asks, brief summary of your journey as a musician and how you ended up with the career you have today. It's obviously a long story, but I'm happy to give you it in a nutshell. I started playing electric guitar when I was 11, and I played in a bunch of rock bands until, throughout high school and early college. But then I went to college for recording and sound recording and classical guitar. But then I ended up liking classical guitar more, so I ended up doing 2 degrees in classical guitar. And while I did those, I ended up going to an early music festival and had an actual, lute and Baroque guitar and theorbo put in my hand. And I just was, from there on out, I was obsessed with the idea of playing, instruments that were popular hundreds of years ago. I thought that was just amazing. So, before I knew it, I started buying lutes and, trying to learn Baroque guitar and all these instruments. And the second I had them, I started being booked for gigs. And so before I knew it, I just kind of was thrown in the rabbit hole of the early music scene and kept playing concerts and liking the music more and more. And so here I am. Oh no. Make Orwell Fiction Again writes, what was your worst gig? I can think of a few, but probably hands down the winner was the time that I agreed to play a dog funeral. It was very sad, actually, but not the most artistically rewarding gig I've ever had. James writes, did people ever mention your long nails or think it was weird or gross? Whenever I go out in public, I feel as though my nails make me seem like I neglect basic hygiene, even though I just like to play guitar. Hey man, I feel your pain. Yeah, that's something that we all have to get through as classical guitarists. If you have nails, I've definitely been on, a subway or two when I have my hand on the railing and somebody else is going to put their hand there and they see my nails and, you get that look of, huh? And the funny thing about that is it's one thing to have long nails, but then if they see that on your left hand, you have short nails, now they're just like totally confused, because they can't think of why would anyone do that. Anyway, I think you explain to people that it's your art form, it's what you do to express yourself musically. And now it becomes, instead of having this, hygienic problem, you have this skill that you have cultivated. I think it can become actually a really interesting point of conversation. All right, Jeb writes, who were your favorite rock bands during your young shredding days? That's an easy one to answer because I had just like a few that I was obsessed with and wore, like metal band shirts every day throughout high school. Iron Maiden and Metallica. Those were the 2 that I listened to every CD they had, and I could play through several Metallica CDs on my Kirk Hammett guitar. This next one is a really important question. Previn writes, did your hand ever start tingling while playing guitar, and you got scared so much that you thought you could stop playing after years of practice? Yes, this happened to me. I had a whole experience and I'm still somewhat involved in fixing this hand issue that I had. So I had some tingling and then I eventually had a lot of tension and my hand felt like a rock. And still, if I don't do a good job with stretching and maintaining my technical fitness, I can have a really hard time with a lot of inflammation and things. And so it's very common that people get injured when they play guitars. It's a very athletic activity, actually. So the first thing is take it very seriously. In short, I think I'll do a video about this at some point, but in short, always stretch before you play, always. Take breaks when you play. So, don't sit down for 3 hours and play without taking a break. Take a break every 50 minutes or an hour or so. And search for any excess tension in your playing. Maybe for this, you might need a teacher to see if perhaps your hands are contorted in any way, or maybe even your posture is contorted, causing tension, and then you do that repeated tense activity like 1,000 times when you pluck a string, and that can lead to inflammation. So breaks, stretching, all those things are good. Find a teacher to help you get through it. Jorge writes, can you record us an audiobook with that sweet, sweet, sexy voice of yours? Sure thing, Jorge. No problem. Che writes, have you ever composed or wished to compose music? Good question. I have composed, especially when I was playing in rock bands and things. I wrote some songs. But actually, when I became a classical musician, I sort of stopped trying to compose. I got so interested in playing, works by incredible geniuses that I kind of thought that my compositions didn't really add up. So I spent a lot of years just being obsessed with what other people had written and playing a lot of their music and being obsessed with trying to understand Bach and Chopin and Tárrega and all these amazing musical minds. But I have written a few things, and maybe one of these days on the channel I'll be brave enough to share it with you guys, okay? Brody Norris writes, what is one thing you wish you knew as a beginner? A lot of things. I wish I knew how to practice. And if I could go back in time and help myself with one musical concept, it would be how to use my time really efficiently. If I could go back in time and teach my former self one musical concept, it would be how to practice, how to use my time efficiently, And so if you feel like you don't know how to practice, by the way, I did a video covering the 5 common practice mistakes that really was mostly about my common practice mistakes, but I hope you might find that useful. This is an important one. Brendonios writes, what was starting classical guitar like for you? Do you have tips for guitarists transitioning to classical guitar? Definitely. I think that maybe one of the number one barriers when people want to start classical guitar, if they play, folk or rock or something, is that generally you read from musical score when you play classical. And if you can't do that, which most other guitar styles don't, then, how can you get to the music? And people think of guitar tab as cheating, but actually, if you've watched my videos, you'll know that tab was the dominant type of notation for plucked instruments for hundreds of years, and it's only since the 1800s that guitarists adopted violin-like notation in the treble clef to play its music. So there's nothing wrong with tab, I would say. And I think that nowadays, Google any classical guitar piece and you'll find a dozen versions in guitar tab. And like I did when I had to audition at college, I couldn't read music well enough, but my fingers could move. I had enough facility to play some of the music, kind of. And what's important is that you play the music. Get your fingers there. Start making those sounds, and that the sounds you hear coming out of your guitar that you're making, you're this human jukebox at that point, you're going to hear these sounds that are so beautiful. And I made that sound, and that's so inspiring. That's what keeps you going. Not playing a C major scale for 3 hours a day. There's nothing wrong with playing C major scales. You should also play your scales. That's very important to build the technique to play as well. But that's not the end goal, right? So learn tab, learn by ear, whatever is the fastest thing for you to get to playing. I would say make sure you just go there as fast as you can, and then you'll catch up on score reading like I did later. Musical Crusader writes, whenever you play, do you actually get lost in the melody? What I mean is, do you get in the zone when you play? Absolutely. When I do really poorly in performance, it's because I'm not in the zone and I'm not lost in the music. I'm thinking about, I'm distracted. I'm thinking about, are they judging me? Do they think I can't believe he missed that note? Or I'm thinking, I'm gonna miss the note, or, some sort of stage fright mentality. And I think to perform well often means to just, get lost in the music. You're still in control. You're very much, you know what you're doing, and you trust all the hours of practice you put in. But in the actual moment, the best performing I've ever done, I've sort of transcended all of that and just let go. And it's like you're in this, timeless right brain space of pure emotive feelings. And then you just sort of let go and express these emotions, and it's a beautiful thing. And you finish, and it's as if, the time went by like that. An hour-long solo recital can go by so fast because you just get in the zone. Or it can take an eternity because you never get in the zone and you're just worried about making mistakes. And so I'm always struggling to, make sure I get in the zone. Okay, Milo writes, who is your favorite romantic period composer and what's your favorite symphony? That's tough. I really have an affinity for romantic music. I think for me, Baroque music and 19th century romantic music are just for some reason, they just sort of hit me right in the feels. So I would say that in the romantic period, I have a real soft spot for Schubert. The poetry, the early German romantic poetry that he sets by Goethe and Schiller and Goethe, of course, is so beautiful. And then how he sets it is just unreal. Not to mention that Schubert played guitar and actually published some of his songs originally for guitar and voice. And so I've been to Schubert's house in Vienna, and that was sort of a quasi-religious experience. It was very cool. So Schubert is probably one of my favorites. And then in terms of symphonies, I think Mahler's symphonies are just amazing. Of course, Mahler 5, but also to this day, if I ever want to just shed tears from listening to music, listen to the last 10 minutes of Mahler 2, the Symphony 2. And there's this one video on YouTube of Leonard Bernstein conducting the end, from heart. He knows everybody's part, and he's just so, oh my God, it's incredible. Just search Mahler 2 ending, and it's just, it'll make you cry every time. Tyler Jackson writes, is it ever appropriate to use rubato when performing a work by J.S. Bach? Yes. Rubato is the art of bending time. So if you see rhythms that look like they're very quantifiably, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, are you able to bend them, speed up and slow down? Absolutely. It's just, you have to know which style you're in and how much or maybe how to do this. In fact, one type of rubato in Baroque music in general, so Bach is not a special composer in terms of the style. He's writing within those stylistic parameters of Baroque music. So for example, one type of rubato in the Baroque period is inégale, where you see, typically in the French style, you see 1 and 2 and 3 and that can become 1 and 2 and 3 and so that's a type of rubato. Actually, you're stealing time and then rushing through it. And generally in larger phrases, yes, you can do it. It's just not quite the same type of rubato as you get in, say, the 19th century with piano works by Chopin. All right, well, I could just keep reading these all day. Thank you guys so much for all your really good questions. For the ones that I didn't get to, I'm going to try my best to go through and answer as many of them as I can by just replying to your comments. Thank you all for being interested in my channel and for helping me to get to 300,000 subscribers. I'm really grateful for all of you. Until next time, see ya.